First to the stage, I would like to invite Joe Sassani to talk about ElkosRx.
Thanks, Erica. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce naltrexone for topical use in the treatment of early-stage diabetic foot ulcers. We believe that naltrexone for diabetic ulcers is a de-risked, high-potential commercial opportunity, in part because this is a repurpose for an established drug that is approved for systemic administration for drug and alcohol abuse. We have a novel technology, strong intellectual property, as I'll show you, and compelling economics. Because this is a repurposed drug, it should have a simplified regulatory pathway and reduced risk, etc. Unfortunately, there's a global diabetes epidemic. Even in the United States, there are 23 million diabetics, of whom 2.3 million have foot ulcers. Fortunately, about 70% have early-stage foot ulcers, as you see in that top picture. We want to prevent them from progressing to more serious ulcers and even amputations. We think we can help. 14 to 20% of diabetics will have a foot ulcer at some point during their life. Current treatments are inadequate. Early-stage ulcers are treated with routine wound care. More advanced ulcers are treated with very expensive, inconvenient treatments, and in fact have been decided to be not very useful. Therefore, there's a significant need for an inexpensive, easy-to-apply treatment for early foot ulcers. Our research has shown that treatment with naltrexone antagonizes the opioid growth regulatory pathway that we have shown to be abnormal in diabetics. In the normal individual, as you see up there in the right-hand cartoon, there's a balance between naltrexone and its receptor. In diabetics, OGF, the moderator for this pathway, is overproduced. That creates suppression of healing. This is a negative growth regulatory pathway. By giving naltrexone, we block the receptors and we restore the normal balance in these individuals. We have multiple publications on the topic, and they show that in both models, animal models of type 1 and type 2 diabetes, we speed wound healing, we increase DNA synthesis, we increase collagen production and blood vessel formation. These not only heal the ulcers faster, but will help prevent recurrence, which, if you'll permit it, is the Achilles heel of diabetic foot ulcers. Unfortunately, there's a huge market for this medication if it's successful. That's due to this huge epidemic. We have significant patent protection both for methods and composition of naltrexone for this purpose. If we receive funding from you by the second half of 2020, we should be able to begin our clinical trial of safety and efficacy of this medication in the treatment of early diabetic foot ulcers. Thank you for your attention. I'm open to questions.
Yeah, so one question, have you gotten to the point where you actually believe you understand the dosing and the like in order?
Yes, we have a GMP formulation that we've produced. We've done animal studies on it. We've achieved the optimum dosage, and we're working now on the toxicity. That some of that will have to be sent out to a reference lab for pathology, but we have all that done.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the animal models that were used. They're notoriously not helpful in diabetic wound ulcers. So what is it that makes you think that this is actually going to translate into humans?
Well, they're the best models we have, and they're consistent. The DBDB mouse is a fat mouse, and that's the model for type 2 diabetes, and the streptozotocin-treated rat is the one for type 1 diabetes. We use both of those models, we get the same results. So we think we're in pretty good shape, but until you try it in humans, we won't know.
Thank you.
You mentioned an expedited FDA pathway. That begs the question, how much money will you need and how long will it take to get the product to market?
We think to complete our full clinical trial of about 60 patients, it'll probably take $500,000 to $600,000. We've already completed a 60-patient trial of this eye drops containing naltrexone in diabetic dry eyes, and so that's already gotten approval for the FDA for that, progressing that far, and we're now going to expand that to a larger phase 2 study. So topical eye drops containing naltrexone are already being in phase 2 clinical studies, so we really think this will be an expedited pathway.
But how, 500,000 and when?
That would be about 60 patients with early stage diabetic foot ulcers over 30 days.
30 days to market or 30
No,
days?
it's 30 days to complete the study.
Okay.
We can enter that study, we think, in the second half of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
So you referenced the diabetic dry eye disease study. That's actually, my understanding is that's being pursued sort of.
Separate company.
Separate company.
Okinova.
But, yeah, but you're going to be able to take advantage of that activity to de-risk your.
We should be, yes.
Okay. And naltrexone obviously has a long history.
Yes, and for systemic chronic administration, so that really de-risks this from the point of view of the FDA. I mean, the systemic absorption of this, which we'll have to document in these preclinical studies, should be very negligible.
And will you combine this with offloading as well, or not for this?
Yes, offloading is part of the standard of care.
Can you explain your team strategy to me a little bit to take the product to market? You know, you have a lot of medical expertise on your staff right now, or on your team, which is good for where you are right now, but as you commercialize this, what's your team strategy going forward?
Well, Mark Lane, our CEO, has extensive experience in the pharma industry. Pam has extensive regulatory experience. I'm an ophthalmologist, oddly enough, who's had 2 years of general surgery and treated a lot of people with diabetic foot ulcers, unfortunately, including with their amputations. Pat McLaughlin and Ian Zagan are the people who actually discovered the uses of naltrexone over a period of about 35 years, and I've been working with them for about 30 years. So we have all the pieces in place, we think, to have the basic team, and then of course we're going to have a podiatrist who's not part of the team and has no vested interest in this, will actually do the clinical study, and that's a podiatrist. At the Hershey Medical Center, we may also work with our local VA. They're working on developing an IRB right now.
What's the strategy, what's the thoughts in terms of, is this, get this through clinical trial, and then
Right.
are you going to have to take it to market, or do you
No.
think it?
Once we get a significant result in that first 60 patients, then we're presuming it'll be licensed by a big pharma, who'll probably have to repeat all those studies anyway. They don't usually accept your basic studies, but this will be then fully developed by big pharma, not by us.
Through a licensing agreement?
Yes. Right now, the intellectual property belongs to Penn State. We're going to license it from them, and then in turn, it'll be licensed out to big pharma.
And in terms of the formulation, that's scalable?
Yes. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sassani.